Hello everyone, welcome to 3ddesignacademy.com. In this video, I will be doing a project review and provide recommendations to improve the model. Now, this is the model that I'm going to be dissecting today. It is a project by a student. It is based on a sketch, so I'm guessing this is probably a student work. So let's dive into it. Now, because this is actually not based on a production vehicle, I'm going to take some design liberties in order to improve it. The process is still very similar. You still want to clean up the surfaces, make sure that everything's good. So let's just go through it one by one. Okay, so the first thing that I noticed is the reflection and the upper. So if you see this over here, you'll see that there's a slight peak over here, and also of course the windshield has a little bit of bump. So let's go ahead and fix that. Now when you're doing a model like this, you always want to build across the center, especially surfaces like these, because, well, there are a couple of reasons. First of all, if you build across the center and you make sure that it's symmetrical, you're going to ensure that there's no peak in the middle. I mean, this one doesn't have a peak in the middle, which is good. And also, it's always going to be G3. Now, if I grab a curvature comb like this, you'll see that there is a little bit weird peak over here. And if you just click on this, I think, yeah, there's something going on. So you always want to build across the center. So let's go ahead and do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually try to extract some curves. I do have a curve layer, so let's see if I can just use this. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn the symmetry off because it's kind of hard to build with symmetry on. And let's actually turn that off over here. So I'm going to try to keep the footprint very similar, but I'm going to just make some adjustments. So I'm just going to mirror this over here. And actually, I'm going to copy and paste this so that I don't mess with the original. Oh, actually, let me just do that again. So I'm just going to duplicate mirror. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to connect. So I'm going to say attach, connect like this. I'm going to pick here and pick here the curve like this. History, I don't care. And that's why I have it. Now I'm going to do a fit curve, and when you're doing a fit curve, you probably want to, if it's going across the center, you probably want to do 3. That's my recommendation. So I'm just going to do that. Of course, the CV structure, I think it looks a lot better. So I'm going to take that. Okay, so I have a curve at the top like this, and I'm just going to make sure that it's symmetrical like this. And let's go ahead and do the same thing over here. So I'm just going to go ahead and take a curve over here. I'm not sure. Okay, so it looks like there's no curve there. All right. So since I already have a footprint, I'm just going to duplicate some of these like this, and of course duplicate it. Now, if it was like a fresh build, I would use skin, but since I already have the footprint or the surface patches sort of made, I'm just going to recycle them. So again, I'm just going to duplicate this one. Oh, looks like there's an extra curve. I don't know why. So let's get rid of that. And again, I'm just going to do a fit curve like this, and that's good. Now that is going to, because it is a fit curve, it is not 100% positional, but that's okay. And now I'm just going to duplicate this edge. Actually, there should be a curve, so let me just extract this. So I'm going to copy and paste, put in the default layer, and just hide that. And of course, you can just duplicate it over to the other side, or you can also put in a symmetry layer like this, and you should be able to make a square with that. So I'm just going to go ahead and make a square. So it's going to 1, 2, 3, and 4 like this. And I think that looks much better. Now, if you're concerned about the height, there are a couple of things you can do. You can probably play around with the boundary blend a little bit, or you can just leave it as is. Just turn patch precision on like this. And you can just grab the CVs like this and just pull them up and just make it similar. Now, if you don't like that and you want precise section, what you can do is you can also duplicate this curve over here. Actually, you know what? I do believe I have a curve there. So let me just copy and paste like this. I'm just going to put it over here. Oh, symmetry should be on. And let's just turn the curves layer off, and I'm just going to grab these, and you can always use a skin. So I'm just going to click here, shift click here like this and like that. Now that's going to ensure that this section is exactly as you commanded. If you look at it from the side view, it's exactly, the placement should be exactly the same. So that's the beauty of using skin. So if you project this over here, there is no gap between the two. Now, of course, the problem is this is good for making this, but it doesn't really follow the section. So one thing you can do is once you have this like this, you can, of course, delete the construction history over here, make this into a degree 3, and you can align. So I'm just going to align this one like that. Over here, you can increase the position influence to max like this. And of course, you can just turn on blending. I would say for this one, I'm just going to do extra series of 3, blend factor of 0, like this. And actually, you know what? That's pretty close. If it's not exact, that's okay. Now with this one, you should be still able to keep the center section as is because I didn't really move anything. So if I were to project Z, okay, maybe I did. But still a lot closer than before. If you want to make final adjustments, that's good too. All right, so now that's done. I'm just going to delete the construction history, and I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing over here. I'm just going to align this one. But this time, I am going to set the extra series of 2 because I already matched this one, so I don't want to move that. And I'm just going to change the blend factor to 1 so that whatever I do here, everything is gradually transitioning onto here. So as you can see, the highlight's a lot better. It's flowing on a lot nicely. And the best thing is this is G3 across the center. So if I just check this one, as you can see, nice acceleration towards the end. And of course, it's smooth across the center, which is a lot better than before. Okay, so now that the roof is done, let's move on to the windshield. So if you look at the windshield over here, let me just turn symmetry on. You'll see that there's a little bit of weird bump across there, and I think acceleration towards the end, it's not exactly ideal. So I will probably fix that too. All right, so in order to do that, there's a couple of things you can do. You can use skin, you can make curves and make skin. That'll be one thing you can do. You can also make a square, maybe clean up the highlights a little bit. So maybe this time I'll use a square. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is, actually, before I do anything, let me just turn the symmetry off. And if you look at the curves that was made to, that the student made for the windshield, as you can see, it's the structure is, I think it has a little bit too much acceleration towards the end. So I think it's a little bit too much. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm just going to copy and paste, put it over here. Let's just make this into a symmetry layer. I'm going to duplicate it over to the other side. Oops. I don't know what I made, but that's okay. Just going to grab this curve over here. I'm going to say edit, duplicate mirror onto the other side. And of course, I am going to do an attach. So connect. I'm going to grab this one. I'm going to grab this one over here like this. And I'm just going to do a symmetry. Oh, not symmetry. My bad. I am just going to do a fit curve, and I'm going to make a degree 3. Of course, but because this is actually trying to fit it over here, as you can see, the acceleration is quite severe, and the CV structure like this is not desired. So what I would do is I would actually turn on symmetric modeling on like that, and I'm just going to push it towards the center so that it's somewhat gradual like that. All right, so that looks good, and this actually shouldn't have gone to the symmetry layer. Okay, so let's just go ahead and also extract this one over here. So I'll probably just do a fit curve like this, and instead of making it 3, I'm just going to make it degree 2. And I would actually prefer this to be somewhat centered so that it's got a nice linear shape. And I am going to put this in the symmetry layer so that I can use a square. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's delete this one because I don't like the structure of that. So I can use a square. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3 over here, and 4 against this curve over here. Of course, because this is a little bit different, the structure is a little bit different. As you can see, it's going to have a little bit different volume, which is fine because you want to make sure that the surface structure is good. Now, however, if you look at this, it's going to have a little bit of flat spot. Well, actually, it's not a flat spot. I think it might be a little bit too much acceleration. I would actually pull this up a little bit. So if I were to just copy and paste this over here, and let's go ahead and do a symmetric modeling on this one, I would actually pull this up a little bit. So if I were to do is pull this up, actually mouse sensitivity 50. If you look at the highlight over here, it's potato chipping. So you just want to pull it up, and that's going to make it a little bit more gradual like this. I'll prefer that. Actually, because of the shape over here, I think square might not be the best tool. So let's do this. I'm just going to delete this one. I think part of the reason is because this is flat over here. So if you have a shape like this, another thing you can do is you can also do a bi-rail. So I can just duplicate this. Oh, actually, you know what? Let's do a fit curve. And you can use the stretch tool over here. Snap it here like this, and you can do a bi-rail. Like that. Oh, why? Oh, okay. So it looks like the position is a little bit off. So let me just update that. Oh, that's why. Okay. So that's why the position was off. Because I did a fit curve on this one, I think that might have moved the surfaces a little bit, which is okay. All right, so I'm just going to delete the original over here, and I'm just going to go ahead and do a bi-rail like this. Now, bi-rail is actually probably not the best method, but still, if you want to keep the center section as is, that's something you can do. Of course, the only problem with the bi-rail is because it adds a span in the middle, it's going to give you something like that. Of course, another thing you can do is you can use a skin like this and just add a little bit of crown. Let's see, I'm just going to give it a little bit of crown, proportional crown, and you can just roughly match it to whatever the center section it has. I think the acceleration over here might be a little bit too much compared to the front. I think that's why it's giving me a highlight like this, but it's still looking a lot better than before. So that's something you can do. Of course, you can, of course, do the same thing over here where you create a curve like this. Curve here and just do a skin. That's something you can do too. So, well, actually, let me give that a try too. So let's go ahead and use skin. So I'm going to grab this curve, shift click and click this one, and there it is. The only problem is, of course, it doesn't really fit the section over here, so you do have to update it. However, the highlight, maybe not the best. Okay, so let's give that a go. So I'm just going to make it a degree 3 across here, and I'm just going to align this piece over here onto the curve like this, and this time I'm going to say blend factor of 0 like that, and it still has a flat spot, or I guess a little bit too much acceleration, so I think it really needs to be adjusted a little bit. So one thing you can do is you can probably just pull this one over here. So I'm just going to turn symmetry on. I think, yeah, I think this needs to be pulled back a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, actually, let's do NUV. So I'm just going to grab NUV and I'm just going to pull this down like that. And as you can see over here, that also helps with the little bit too much acceleration that I have on this one. So that is something you can do, and of course the highlight is flowing a lot better through the center. So yeah, overall much better. But I just don't like the amount of volume that this surface has. So yeah, and probably I will just push this one a little bit towards the center, something like that. And this one maybe do something like that so that the CV structure is a little bit better. Yeah. I think that's working out a little bit better than before. Okay, and of course, let's move on to the side glass. So I think the side glass, now if you want to keep the side glass as is, like this, which that is totally fine. But I do think that it is a little bit too much volume. And of course, if you look at towards the end, it has a peak and goes into a reverse peak over here. Professional term for this is a baby's butt, because it kind of looks like a butt over here. Usually that's not desired. Of course, it really depends on the design. If this is something that was intended, you can keep it. But of course, if it's not, then you do have to fix it. All right. The windshield, I'll just leave it. I mean, it is what it is. So I'll just leave it like this. However, I'm going to fix this. Now, if you want to keep the profile as is, what I would do is maybe just do a degree 2 curve over here. Actually, you know what? Let's make it a degree 3 because it's degree 3 up here as well. Now, I think the CV structure is pretty complementary, which is nice. However, I think this does need to be fixed. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to delete this one over here. And I am going to flatten it a little bit to match this one over here. So let's go ahead and do a square. So it's going to 1, 2, 3, and 4 like this. And I'm just going to reduce the amount of degrees. Let's 2 and 3 to keep it minimal. Now, if it's a student project, having a side glass like this is totally fine because, well, the window doesn't need to go down. But if it's not, let me show you this too. If you want to just keep it like that, and if you want this nice, soft transition over here, what you can do is you can always put a filler like this. So I would say chord, it's going to be G2. Let's see. I would say probably existing theoretical is probably better just because it flattens out as it goes towards the rear. So I would say maybe 200 form factor. I'm going to leave it at 1 just to make it a little bit simple. And just build it. Why does it build? I wonder if it has anything to do with this being flat, but that's what existing theoretical should be for. Maybe it's too big. Let me try with okay, I know why. This model is actually really small. I thought it was big, but if you look at the grid, okay, so that's why. I just made my filler a little bit too big. Okay, so for this one, I would say edge align on the top. Edge align here. And I think everything's a lot more controlled and looks a lot better. Now, if you want to make this a production surface, however, so let me just copy this and just put it as a whip. If it is a production surface, however, there are certain things that you have to do. The windows do need to roll down, so you should actually technically make a barrel. Of course, making a barrel, makes it a little bit more difficult. So what I would actually do is, if you're just trying to make a visual model, what you can do is you can just do a rail like this. And what it does, especially if you make it, actually, no, that's parallel, no. Well, actually, you know what? Let's do this. I am going to just make a curve like that. I'm just going to project it from the side. And that's going to allow me to extract the curve over here. I'm just going to do a fit curve. And I would actually make it 2 degrees. And I'm going to actually center it over here. Like that. And let's go ahead and put this over here. Like this. And I'm going to just do a rail. It's going to parallel. What that does is it allows me to create a very nicely flowing surface. It's not a barrel, but it's pretty close. So what you can do is you can just extend this one over here like that. And you can just extend this one over here. Actually, you know what? Let's make it symmetrical. So I'm just going to go ahead and, well, the symmetry is on, and let's just go ahead and extend this one outboard so that Oh, well, here's a problem. So if you look at this, this surface, I think is diving down a little bit too much. So maybe this doesn't work well. So let me just show you just as a demonstration. So I would actually, if I were to make this, I'm just going to make it into degree 2 this way. And let's hide this for a second. And just extend it like this, and I'm just going to trim it. Now, of course, the problem is for student projects, the window doesn't really have to roll down, and sometimes the design is really, it's a little bit more liberal. And as you can see over here, the side glass is very leaned down like this in order to make it a very, I guess, well, basically make the proportion a very nice, nice and slim. Because low and wide gives you a nice proportion. That's why sports cars, well, it's partly due to aerodynamics, but it also has a nice proportion too. So, all right, so I think this actually method is, well, it's part of the reason why production cars look the way they do. Obviously, it doesn't really work for a design project like this. So I think let's actually go back to the width over here. So this one, I'm going to go ahead and just delete. All right, so let's get those back. And I think this is probably a little bit better way of setting up the roof, which has a nice highlight going through the middle. The curvature cones looks good, and the acceleration over here doesn't look as extreme. Now, if you do want to give it a little bit acceleration towards here, I would actually make this into 2 patches. So maybe I'll just do something like that. And let's go ahead, and I'm going to just trim convert this one, and I'm going to trim that one over there. So now we got 2 patches like this, and I will maybe, I don't know, duplicate this edge over here, and I'm going to just use the stretch tool. I'll preferably make this into 2 surfaces, and it's just making it out of 1. And I'll just do something like this, which gives you a little bit of acceleration towards the end. And I think that's a little bit more controlled way of doing this. Of course, it's not exact, so you can always like just do an intersect and trim. So that is something you can do. Actually, you know what? Let's go ahead and do that. So let me just undo this, and I'm just going to extend this one just a little bit like that. And I'm going to go ahead and intersect it over here. Like that. I'm just going to trim over here and trim over here, and that gives you a nice acceleration towards the end if it is desired. And of course, you can just put the fillet back in here, 10 mils, and that's good. Yeah. All right, so I'm going to go through over other surfaces as well, but at least for the first part, I think that's a pretty good cleanup right there. All right, so we'll continue in part 2. Thank you guys for watching, and see you next time. Want to learn more? Then become a member at 3ddesignacademy.com, where you will find hundreds of video tutorials ranging from basics, including car creations, intermediate level tutorials such as this wheel, all the way to Class A modeling of the interior car exterior. Interested? Visit 3ddesignacademy.com.